Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. It is the Daily Show, and today is July 10th. We're coming off a big weekend, and today, Daily Show is going to focus mainly on the UFC. We had UFC 290 on Saturday. It was a great fight card. So I guess just to start off, Anthony, how you doing? And how'd you enjoy the fight card? I think it was one of the better ones we've had so far this year.
Yeah, I'm doing good, and I agree. It definitely was one of the better ones. Which I don't think it's a surprise because they actually kind of tried on this one, and they finally like put together a good card with five good fights, and then it delivered. And then I just like how um, well, I don't know. I'd have to look at some of the other ones. I know some people are saying this is like one of the best cards ever, or even just in a long time is what it feels like. So I guess I'm not too mad, but it's weird how like a card that where you put five good fights on it delivers. It's not like I feel like it should be such a foreign concept, but it
Yeah.
was good. It was a good time.
I'm with you on that. It's not as hard as they make it look sometimes, and I think it was just like a combination of putting good fights together, and then it seems like every fight delivered. Like we had the first four fights on the main card were all wild. I think the main event, in terms of like madness and pure entertainment, took a little bit of a drop off. That's not a bad thing, however, because
Hmm.
that's kind of the way Volk had to approach that fight. So I'm not criticizing him. And even on the prelims, we had a lot of stoppages. Had the Robbie Lawler retirement, which I think was one of the best send offs we've seen in a long time. Not just he was able to get a win, which not many guys do, and then they had the great video package for him. And we even lost a couple fights. We lost to Jack Della Maddalena versus Sean Brady. Had some other late replacements. Val Woodburn was in on short notice for Trayshawn Gore. So this card could have been even better if we didn't get those handful of cancellations too. So
Hmm.
and then we'll start right at the top here, right at the main event. Alexander Volkanovski goes out there and defends the featherweight strap, and he did it in relative easy. May not be the best word, but he made it look easy. I think it's probably the better way to put it. What were your impressions of Volk and your impressions of the main event in general?
Um, I mean, I don't know. Volk just did Volk things, you know. He just looks so much better. It's good to see him though against someone new opposition. I would say, um, and still he's that dominant, that good all around. Because I definitely thought Yair was going to be a challenge, um, even though obviously, even though the lines were the lines for a reason, like big underdog, big favorite. But I think anyone that kicks that hard and has the conditioning to be still kick that strong through 5 rounds and be that dangerous and that wild through 5 rounds, can win any fight. And I thought Volk did a good job. I like seeing him wrestle again and show that he can still do that, at an elite level. Even though I know he hasn't really had to wrestle too often in his last couple of fights, he could just win them with his hands or his striking, I should say. But yeah, I think he even took one or two. I can't remember what it was, but he took a good shot too,
Mhm.
and kept going too, which I like. So I mean, I thought it was an overall good performance. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm with you on that, and I thought he had a great game plan because like you said, he was a big favorite, but it's at the same time, if you're picking an underdog to win at, I believe the air was sitting around plus 300, maybe a little less. It kind of
Hmm.
fluctuated, but when you're looking at a big underdog to win, you kind of like your big underdog to be someone with massive power, insanely quick kicks, that has the capability of finishing the fight. So he even though he was the big favorite, it's not like he was in there against someone who stood no chance either. So, and he had a good game plan, like you said, utilizing that wrestling, very smart. He defended the kicks really well. He was catching kicks and landing the takedowns off that, which dissuades you from throwing the kicks when you're striking. He the punch that ended the fight basically stepped into a kick and landed a really nice hook. So he dealt with the kicks really really well, and I think that performance is kind of displays how smart Volkanovski is and how good he is at game planning for guys. It felt like he had the perfect game plan to deal with Yair. And it feels like just about every fight he comes in with a perfect game plan. And I think it kind of reinforced how smart he is and how technical he is. So I'm with you. I think it was a great performance. And now the question is kind of who does he fight next? So I think we have two very obvious paths to go. One is go back up to 155 and take on Islam Makhachev. Do that rematch, very first fight, very close fight the first time around. Then the other would be to stay at 145 and defend again, and that would probably be against Ila Tuporia. So I guess what are your thoughts on the direction that they should go forward with Volkanovski?
Um, I'm kind of always a big fan of like staying in your weight class, or especially if if there's stuff to do, like when he first went up and fought Islam. Also, I mean, Volk's done so much, so I was fine with him going up for that fight the first time. Um, but and I thought he won that fight too. I've only seen it the one time, but so I'd be fine with him going up again. The only problem is Islam hasn't even defended against a 155er, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about how that arguably is like the most skilled, the most packed division. I guess some of the guys are getting a little older now, but still, 155 has always been elite. And so, like, I want to see him defend his belt against another 155er. Um, so I would think I would rather him fight Ilia Topuria, but I know I was talking with one of my friends. I think I'd be fine if Ilya got the shot right now, but I also wouldn't. I also wouldn't be mad if he got matched up against another person inside the top, maybe top five, or do another. He has to fight one more guy, as I know, which always happens to some of these people. But um, he's. I don't think there's anything wrong with fighting another elite guy, like top tier guy, and showing you that you're still good enough and that you're actually ready for Volk.
Mm-hmm.
So while I wouldn't mind either, I would prefer, I think, stay in their own division. Let Islam fight a 155er, and then Volk fight Tuporia. And he needs surgery anyway, so he has time off. So that could give you room for a fight.
Yeah, and I think this is a tough one for me because I agree with a lot of the things you said. The prime thing that I agree with is I'd like to see Islam defend against a 155er. And it's almost like because Volk did his job. He took the challenge last time around. Didn't get the win. Very close fight. I scored it for Islam, and uh, the swing round for me when I rewatched it was round two. I rewatched it for the film study, and there's a moment in round two where Volk gets like a kind of knockdown, and it's hard to tell if Islam gets knocked down or if he like trips up against the cage. I kind of thought he tripped, so that's why I gave it to Islam. If you think he's getting knocked down and getting hit, then you give it to Volk. So it's kind of very, very tough fight to score. But all that's to say that was a competitive fight. And Volk did his job of going back down and defending against Yair. The difference is Islam didn't do his job of defending 155 in that same span of time. And that's just because I guess that's not really an insult on Islam, more of a credit to Volk because he's so willing to go back down and fight so frequently. So it's almost like I'm with you with giving Islam a 155 opponent. But on the flip side, Volkanovski has done everything I think he needs to do to get another crack. So I see the positives, I see the negatives, and I'm in the same spot as you. I would not complain otherwise. Other thing I'll add is that logistically, I'm not sure who they would give the 155 fight to because Charles said he won't be able to make that date, and your next competition really would be the winner of Gaethje and Poirier, and I think the winner of that fight deserves a title shot. I'm more worried about the time frame there. We're talking July 29th, and the turnaround would be October. I mean, in theory, you could do that, but I have a silly suspicion that those two guys are going to get pretty beat up in that fight.
Exactly.
That doesn't seem like a fight that someone is going to be able to turn around on 3 months' notice. So I think logistically, we're facing a lot of struggles as to who Islam would fight at 155. Um, but and as far as Tuporia goes, I think I'd be willing to give Tuporia a fight now against Volk. I'd be fine with that. If they don't, I think Arnold Allen would make sense. You keep him away from Max Holloway. Don't let them run that fight. But Arnold Allen versus Topuria, I think would make the most sense if they give him a challenger, because then even if Allen wins, you can justify an Arnold Allen title shot. So it's kind of
Okay.
a win-win. You'd either get Arnold or Topuria, so we'd have a new challenger either way. So that's kind of the direction I'd go if they give Topuria another 145 fight.
Yeah, because that's fair because didn't Yair lost to Holloway and then didn't he only win one fight after? Or no, I guess he won. He just beat Emmett too.
Yeah,
So he's
he
won
got
two fights then.
yeah, he got Emmett and Ortega,
Okay.
and both of those fights are weird looking back at them in hindsight, because you've got the Ortega fight where it's, did Yair, pop that shoulder out trying to attack an armbar, or did that
Uh-huh.
shoulder just pop out? Hard to say. And the Emmett fight hasn't necessarily aged particularly well after he got beat up by Topuria for 5 rounds. So
Yeah.
looking back.
hmm I agree. I mean, I think that yeah, overall, I think either way will be interesting, will be
Mhm.
fun. I think, and the other thing too is if for well, yeah, is wanting to see Islam fight obviously in his own division, but the Volk too, it just feels like. Um, there's still is that division still packed with people. It just there's no like standouts because everyone keeps losing to Max. But Taporia feels like that one dude a little bit that like oh he might be able to actually get him finally because Yair had the chance obviously, but it wasn't. Then like I said earlier, the lines were the lines for a reason.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel like Taporia's one unless maybe most people still don't like know about him a whole lot or like kind of maybe he might still be underrated, but he does feel like a guy that actually is kind of good everywhere as well. I mean, and he has his holes a little bit, but I think that would be a super fun fight.
Yeah, I'm with you. And sometimes, the things that get swept under the rug are what the UFC is doing. In terms of the last time Ilya Taporia fought, he fought Josh Emmett, who was coming off a title loss. Who do they want to win that fight? They want Ilya Taporia to win that fight because he's a young up and comer. And where do they book that fight? They book it in Jacksonville in front of a crowd, and they put it on ABC. That wasn't an ESPN Plus card; that was an ABC card. So last time around, they did their best to put Topuria in a spot where as
hmm
many people would watch him as possible, and he'd have a good opportunity at looking good. And I think both those things happen. So that's kind of the thing that needs to happen before a title fight. It happens. So um, I guess the last question I have here on kind of this discussion before we move over to the co-main is: do you think that Topuria would be high? Do you think he would be a bigger underdog, or do you think? Okay, the best way to phrase: would he be a bigger underdog than Rodriguez on the betting lines?
Yeah. Um, shoot, I don't know. Because he shouldn't be. I want to say I don't think he should be. Um, my personal opinion, but I think I'm gonna say he will. If not, it might be the same. Um, because I don't know. I just feel like he's gonna be underrated. He's not gonna get as big. Not enough people know him. And then Volk gets another win under his belt. He's looking unstoppable. So yeah, I would say about 300. I feel like it is. I feel like I'm definitely not gonna see a two there, but I don't think I'll see like a high 300. It'll be low 300s.
I'm with you on that. I feel like Volkanovski, just out of respect, you have to price him as sitting around that minus 300 just because of what he's done and how good he is.
hmm
It's almost disrespectful to be line him at minus 150 regardless of who he fights. So
Yeah.
I'm with you there. And then the co-main event was between Brandon Moreno, Alexandre Pantoja. Pantoja wins the belt, 5-round war. Some people are calling it fight of the year. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that. In all honesty, I'd have to go through and look back at some of the fights that had already happened. Regardless, what are your opinions on the co-main event? Both for Moreno and for Pantoja to go out there and take that strap off him and beat him for the third time.
Um, I think okay. Well, first off, for me, we say I was down horrendous after I had to watch one of my favorite fighters, uh, Bobby Knuckles, KO'd. Then the next fight, I had to watch Brandon Moreno get the belt taken off of him. So I was this. I know people were saying like this is like one of the best cards ever, and I was sitting there just miserable. Like, sure, I mean, I'm enjoying it. Like, it's entertaining, but I am not happy. But I mean, it was it was a great fight. I think um, I was happy with all the striking. I felt like Brandon Moreno was literally, besides that first round, winning every single round with the striking. Pantoja could just take some hits, and then he was he's giving some good shots right back too. The grappling exchanges were fun too. There was a couple times. Where each person I think had each other in something for for or at least the position to do something submission wise. So that was entertaining. I know Brandon Moreno had like three reversals. I saw after the fight statistics. So I mean, it was pretty competitive and entertaining everywhere. And ultimately, yeah, it was a great fight. So I mean, I was happy with it. And I think as much as I wanted Brandon Moreno to win, Pantoja was due for his title shot. It was a long
Mhm.
time coming, and I not only did he win, but he put on the show at the same time. So it was a good overall.
Yeah, and looking back, like it's in terms of the scorecards, I think 49 and 46 was the right call on the scorecards. I was looking at those as really really close rounds, but I did have Pantoja winning them with a slight edge. But I think the biggest surprise here for me personally was Pantoja's cardio. And I knew he didn't have good cardio in the past. Like, I think it was the Royval fight where he looked really bad in round two and looked really tired. Ends up getting the submission and winning the fight. But the thing that my biggest takeaway from this fight personally on the side of Pantoja is that he will Justin Gaethje his way through tiredness, which is Justin Gaethje is the prime example of Justin Gaethje will get tired, but he will keep fighting, he will not quit, and he will keep throwing hard shots while tired. And some guys fight like that. Other guys who get tired pack it up and go home. Right? They plop down, they give you the back, they let you put them in a rear naked choke. Pantoja is not that guy. He's the type of guy who fights through that and is still able to fight at a high level while extremely tired. So that's not really something I was expecting. Especially after that first round, I thought, Pantoja really used his whole gas tank, and I thought Moreno was really going to pull ahead and win rounds 2 through 5 just with the pure cardio. But Pantoja did still do some really good things. Was able to lock up that body triangle for a period of time, and that's a good position to kind of um, take some time off the clock and get your breath back a little bit. Had some good control time on the fence, so he was able to use that control time to not tax his cardio too much. And then on the side of Moreno, I was kind of surprised how little he attacked the body, especially early. I thought in rounds, after round one I thought attacking the body was going to be a major part of his game plan. Considering you saw Pantoja get tired, I thought he was going to rip the body, especially in striking exchanges. I thought he was going to rip the body. I thought he was going to throw that body kick that he landed against Kai France that finished the fight. That's a good weapon for him. He has a finish with a body kick. Didn't really use that body kick at all. So I was surprised he didn't attack the body as much as he could have. Maybe he was concerned about the power coming back, but that was something that surprised me. And that's not me trying to take anything away from Pantoja, but just a surprise in the game plan from Moreno. And also, I don't want to poke too many holes in his game plan because I think his corner, Saif Saeed's his head coach. I think he's one of the best head coaches in the sport. So if they're not attacking the body, they probably did it for a reason, but it still kind of confused me.
Yeah, well, definitely agree when you talked about the gas tank. I didn't. I was waiting for him to go to the body so much more, especially around like around two or three or even four, and then even gets it better for round five. Because like you said, I thought it was there that he was showing signs of slowing down um, multiple times. And yeah, I was waiting. He never worked the body as much as I would have liked. And then, as you said, with the body kick, I would say kicking in general a little bit. I wish he showed a little more of, but um, but he did it. So, but I was gonna say, and then also, did you see that he broke his hand in the
Oh yeah.
first round or whatever? Do you think that changed anything necessarily or made anything different? Because I mean, it was kind of hard to tell the way he was fighting still, but
I think I do think the things that I think it could have really affected are when you look at round 5, I think it was. Round 5, Pantoja had his back and they were standing, and all Moreno really had to do was fight the hands to get out of that position. But if you have a broken hand, that's going to really tax your grip strength, and that's going to really tax your ability to fight those hands and grappling. Um, you obviously think punching first when you think of broken hand, but I think that's probably the part where I thought he would do a little bit better at fighting the hands and getting out of some of those positions. So I think that definitely, if his hand was broken, which it was, Dana said at the press conference, it was round 1. So that's probably the spot where I think it would have caught up to him was grappling in those later rounds, especially with trying to work hands and grips and stuff like that.
hmm yeah, that's what I because at first because I mean I knew that 49-46 going to Moreno I thought was a bit much
That was something.
um because I definitely I can't remember the round by round breakdown, but if anything I think I had it 2-2 going into the fifth. Would that make sense?
I believe,
Um,
yeah, I believe round 4 was the closest round, and I
the
think
close
that
one.
was the swing round, because
Okay.
that round, even in rounds 4 and 5, and even 3 a little bit, when they were standing, Moreno was landing good shots. He was letting the combinations rip, and it came down to kind of damage in the striking versus the grappling control time, which is always tricky to score. But Moreno was still getting his hands going late in that fight.
So in that, and that's exactly what I wanted to bring up because I know, like I said, I thought Pantoja won. I just knew I didn't think Moreno did enough to get the belt back. I
Mhm.
felt like it was good. It was he was losing it. So, but then I checked on Twitter, and I felt like that's what the commentators were saying. Like Pantoja was definitely, and then I went on Twitter or something. I saw like the UFC post the fight statistics, and everyone was saying like, not well, the majority of people were saying Moreno was robbed or anything, all these things, but it was because he like would outstrike him by like 20 strikes every round except the first. So do you still had it Pantoja? Or I was wondering because I know in that last round, like I knew he lost, even though I thought he had won the striking in the fifth round. He was sitting on his back for a minute 30, even though he wasn't landing anything. I just knew with the control time they were going to give it to him. That's his round.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the way I looked at it too. Where to me, all those rounds felt close. 4 was razor close. 5 was close, I believe. I don't remember. I think 2 was the round that Moreno clearly won, either 2
Yeah.
or 3, 2, and then 3 was even close. So I think 3 through 5 were all really close, and it was split 1 and 2. So to me, it came down to it felt like Brandon Moreno needed to do a little bit more, right?
hmm
Anytime you're looking at striking damage versus grappling control, and Pantoja had a lot of grappling control going, you have to clearly get those. Had to clearly win those by a wide margin. And even if you're looking at a fight like Amir Albazi versus Kai Kara France, like even in that fight, Kai was really letting his hands go, and they still went towards the grappling. So I felt like he was winning the striking exchanges by a wide margin, but I just didn't feel like it was enough to overcome the grappling. I think those are all incredibly close rounds where if he rips off 1 or 2 more good exchanges, because when Moreno was landing, he was landing in combos. He was landing in 3 or 4 punch combos. If he could have got off a couple more of those, I don't think it was a wash at all. 49-46 makes it seem like it was really one-sided Pantoja, but I think it was incredibly close. So I'm with you on that in terms of the scoring aspect of things.
Because I think even if you if Moreno gets separation and gets him off his back, say with 20 seconds left in the fight, and wins one more exchange like he does, that round might even go back to him. That's
Mhm.
just all you just can't let someone like that's why I said I think doing more. Like I just thought he needed to do more when you said it. Um, is the perfect way to put it because that's all it was. Just win one more exchange of that. You just can't let someone sit to have control for the last minute 30, especially of a 5 round of a title
Yeah.
fight too, where you need that fifth round.
And finishing the round really hurt you as well in that
hmm
regard. So, and then kind of moving forward on this, when you're looking at what's next, this is one that I don't think is an easy answer either. It looks like it's either going to be Moreno again for Pantoja will be his first defense. I know some people are really pushing back on that because it's currently 0-3, Pantoja with the advantage, and so I understand why someone would not be down with seeing this fight again. But I've also seen people say that, this was such an entertaining fight, they want to see it again. So and right now it looks like the number one challenger is looking to be Brandon Royval. He was the backup. He won his last fight by flying knee. He looked great. That was UFC Kansas City. He looked great in that fight. So in Pantoja has a win over him as well. So either way, Pantoja is not getting fresh blood. What direction do you think they should go as far as Pantoja's first defense goes? I guess you could throw Amir Albazi in there as well, but that is not
Uh-huh.
something that I'd be incredibly bullish on personally.
Um, I mean, I don't know if it's because I'm biased, but like I mean, I don't know. It's tough though. If you want to see something new, I guess, because you just had to watch Randall fight for Grano 4 times, so maybe people are getting burnt out. But I mean, there's what fight of his hasn't like delivered yet, or hasn't been phenomenal. That's what earlier I was thinking too when we were talking about how good the card was. I was trying. Well, they did have a cheat code. They had a Brandon Moreno title fight on there. Like that's literally the last like 5 fights have just all been phenomenal. So, and then like I said, I thought that was really good. I would also want to see if and I also like. I mean, this was their third time fighting, but the first two were so long ago. Like these are two definitely different fighters. Yet now the 0-3 now, so it still went the same way. But I think as they are now, I thought the Moreno Figgy second fight was interesting. How they made some changes and came into that, and so I wouldn't mind seeing that again here. Or if anything, I was actually a huge Brandon Royval fan. Like as in, that's like my other dude in this division. That's like my next favorite. So I wouldn't be mad if seeing him finally get a title shot. I think he's a really cool dude. I think he's a super interesting and entertaining fighter, and I've liked watching his last couple. So I think definitely if people are getting burnt out, I think that'll still be an interesting fight, even though he has a loss. But I wouldn't mind seeing that at all either.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a win-win to be honest. And one of the things that I'll kind of piggyback off what you said is Brandon Moreno. I think is one of the most when you talk about the most entertaining fighters in the UFC, you never hear Brandon Moreno's name, but I think his name needs to get put in that conversation because all four fights with Figgy were super entertaining. The fight with Kai France was entertaining. This fight against Pantoja super entertaining, and he's really the perfect co-main event. I'm not sure that I'm not sure how bullish the UFC is on having 125ers headline pay-per-views, to be honest. So I imagine the 125 champ is relegated to that co-main event role for a while. But looking at a guy like Brandon Moreno and putting him in a co-main event of a pay-per-view is about as good as you can do. Same can be said for Pantoja because he's another entertaining guy. Same can be said for Royval, another entertaining guy. So I think in terms of entertainment, it's going to be an A plus regardless of which direction they go. They're in a win-win position, and I'm with you. I'm not going to really complain either way. If you give Moreno that opportunity, I'm fine with it. If you give that opportunity to Royval, I won't complain. And the one thing that I do think may make a little bit of sense is Cejudo said he was willing to fight Brandon Moreno at 135, and I think that is kind of a consolation prize and could give you a really good fight with a really crazy backstory based off their initial friendship and then kind of the Ultimate Fighter. They kind of became that relationship went sour, and now they don't really get along. And we've never really seen that side out of Moreno before.
Hmm.
Even in the Figgy fights, it was kind of more Moreno being like, I don't know why he's talking trash. And it'd be interesting to see that build up between Moreno and Cejudo. So I'm fine with giving that opportunity to Royval and then maybe giving Moreno something big like Cejudo, or regardless of what direction they give Moreno, I think you can do something fun with Moreno if it's not a title fight.
Hmm. And real quick, I just wanted to go back because, and well, one because I know it's kind of different because this has all been in the UFC, but like uh, Izzy was technically 0-3, and they booked the fourth one too. So um, yeah, as much as people thought like he's 0-3, give or take, it was two across two different sports, but like we don't want to see again. People are still ready to watch that fourth one and see him get it back, and then because I would want to watch Moreno maybe fight again without a broken hand. But I just thought of this, because I think in a second fight, I can see so many, different ways that some of those rounds go a little bit, to where Moreno wins. But I don't, based off that fight, do you think, I feel like that was about the way the fight needed to go for Pantoja to win, or what were some of the other options there you think he had? I feel
No,
like he laid his cards down, like that was it, that was the way.
I'm 100% with you. One of the things that I try and do when I'm looking at rematches is who can make the improvements, right? And when I look at how that fight went for Pantoja, Pantoja did every single thing that he could have done to win that fight, aside from finishing the rear naked choke when he had the back
Exactly.
taken.
Okay.
That's the only thing he did not do, and that's something he's very good at. He was not able to do that. Aside from that, I think he did every single thing that he could do to win that fight. And if they run that fight back, I'd probably pick Moreno because he is 4 years younger and he is the guy that can look at the performance and go, what do I need to improve to beat this guy? And that's the same reason I picked Leon in the third Kamaru fight, because that second fight was horrible for Leon up until the head kick. And now, if you're Kamaru Usman, you look back at that and go, well, I just can't get hit by the head kick, and I do everything else the same. When you look back at that as Leon, you have a whole list of things that you can work on, that you can improve upon, whether it's actual physical attributes, whether it's game plan, whether it's mindset, whether it's whatever. You've got all this you can go off to improve, and you're the younger guy that's more athletic that can make those improvements going into the next fight. So a little bit different, right? Because uh, Usman got absolutely knocked out in that second fight, so that does change things as well in the equation. But that's some of the things that I look at when you're going into rematch and going into the next Moreno Pantoja fight. If that fight were to happen, I see all the spots Moreno can improve. I don't see as many spots where Pantoja can improve. I think it went pretty well for him, aside from landing the knockout early or landing the submission with the back taken. So I would pick Moreno in a rematch.
Mhm. And then I wanted to one last thing because when you said it, I thought that was literally actually perfect. Of Moreno is like the perfect co-main event because I think that's why what it is. I mean, I don't think any flyweight's ever going to be one of the most entertaining just because people don't put enough respect on the smaller weight division. And the UFC certainly doesn't put enough respect on
Mm-hmm.
that division. So while they might not be able to headline, that co-main event slot is perfect though. And when you see a Brandon Moreno fight, or hopefully now maybe a Pantoja fight, I don't know if he can deliver another good 5 rounds or rounds if it isn't a quick finish. But regardless of what the first three fights look like, if you see that Moreno, you're getting a good entertaining fight that'll probably last a little bit too. So and then you could put that Volk versus Yair where you just gonna watch the skill, although it might not necessarily be competitive. So it is.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the flyweights, and especially it's the good top flyweights, it is a perfect that co-main event slot because you're more than likely you're getting an entertaining, high caliber, probably longer because they struggle with the power sometimes to find the knockouts. So it is. I do think it's like the perfect lead in from. Hopefully, you had good fights on the undercard, but then the lead into the main event.
Mm-hmm. And shout out to Matt for tuning into the show today. Shout out. But I'm 100% with you, and I doubt that fly. One of the things about flyweights that I think really gets the thing that makes it hard to watch is I think some people struggle to see what's going on because they're so quick, whether it's the combinations and hand speed or whether it's the actual grappling exchanges happen so fast that it's hard to really understand what's going on. Sometimes it's hard to know who lands in some of those exchanges. So I think that kind of makes it, when you're building a pay-per-view to be like UFC at 290 and be one of the best of the year, you're going to have to appeal to a casual audience. You can't just appeal to a hardcore UFC audience. And I don't like to say casual in like a lot of people say that in more of a derogatory sense, but
Yeah,
simply just people who don't watch the sport as often are going to struggle with that speed that happens at 125, and it is not as easy to watch as some of the other divisions.
that just reminded me because people would rather, and the UFC would, I guess, rather show it to people as 265-pound men swinging one time and hitting them. But this is one of the best cards of the year, right? And everything. Did we have a heavyweight fight on the main card?
No, we
Oh,
didn't even have
is
a
it?
lightweight.
Oh, isn't it funny how that works? There,
I
that's
don't I don't think we had a heavyweight fight at all, and we had two light heavyweight fights, and they were fine. Crute Menafield on the prelims, fine,
that
nothing
was yeah,
crazy. Petrino and Prachnio, fine, nothing crazy. Like those were two of the like least entertaining fights on the card. Not that they were bad fights, but we had a great
yeah,
card. So even the
yeah,
even Denise Gomes landed a knockout in the only women's fight. So it's like the bigger weight
yeah.
classes always aren't that.
Exactly. I think yeah, that's funny the way that broke down too.
Hmm.
But uh,
Yeah.
the UFC, hopefully the UFC was paying attention.
The other thing I'll add on that before we move on to the crazy 185-pound fight is just more flyweight fight night main events. There's no reason we can't get two top 10, top 5 ranked flyweights in there for main events. It
I,
baffles me.
I 100% agree. Like we were just over some like heavyweight or light heavyweight, uh, people that are maybe high ranked or sometimes they be just putting anybody on there. I just don't. Yeah, I don't understand.
It worked with France and Elbazi, and hopefully they notice that. So
Hmm.
moving on to this fight was something. Dricus Du Plessis knocks out Robert Whitaker in round two, and I've I believe we're on the same page here, but I've never been high on Dricus Du Plessis as a fighter. As in terms of pure skill, I have never been high on him. But I will say, I think the two spots I was wrong was that I underestimated his physical attributes, the physical strength, the raw power, things like that. I think I underestimated that. And the second thing is, I think I underestimated his game planning. I think he came in with a solid game plan for Robert Whitaker. I'm not sure if he can make the in-fight adjustments yet. He didn't show that. I didn't need to either. Those I will gladly put my hand up and say I was wrong in those two facets of Dricus Du Plessis' game. With that being said, I still don't think Dricus Du Plessis is a great fighter. I know that's crazy to say after he just knocked out Robert Whitaker, who is the second best middleweight of this generation and one of the best fighters we've seen in a very long time, ranked pound for pound and everything. But to me, I still see so many flaws in Dricus Du Plessis' game as a fighter. But with that being said, he was able to get an outstanding win at UFC 290. So I'll admit I was wrong in some aspects of his game, but I still see a ton of issues, even though he's winning fights. So I'll swing that over to you. I believe we've talked in the past and I've talked negatively about Du Plessis together. So
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing I would say, besides that, was the gas tank was a concern. But I think they said on the air that he got some nose surgery or something. So maybe that might not be a concern or as much of a concern moving forward. But I mean, yeah, I agree. And then exactly, and then once beating Rob is beating Rob, so he definitely is a lot skilled, and then got to give him credit. But I take him. I still feel the same way. I think Whitaker beats him most days. Now maybe I'm wrong, and I'll see that in the future. But I think Whitaker beats him, more times out of 10. I don't think he's better than Izzy, and I don't think he's better than Pereira, even though he might not even really be in the middleweight anymore. But I would take over, a lot of those ranked middleweights because some of them are just not the best.
It's a bad
So
it's a bad division in general, so he gets a little leeway.
exactly.
That's why he was able
So
to get to this point.
So that's I mean, I think it is what it is. He won a fight. He was better than a majority of those middleweights, anyways. I didn't think he was top tier, but you win a fight like that, he looked all around good. I mean, it was a pretty great performance. Um, and now he gets the fight for the belt. So I would agree with you. I mean, he showed a lot. That was a huge win. And while I think he is skilled and he is near the top, I still don't think he's at that next level. He just, I don't want to say got lucky, but he just, did what he needed to do. He got matched up with the fight and won it.
Yeah. One of the things that I'll say is it's been long documented that Robert Whitaker does not do as good against southpaws, and Romero gave him some trouble with some power shots early in his top tier UFC run for Whitaker. And I think that Duplessis came in with a really good game plan in landing the power strikes from the southpaw stance. That jab came from the southpaw stance. It landed hard. But I also am concerned about Whitaker's chin because he is someone who has been in absolute wars and he has been knocked out before. Right, he was knocked out by Wonder Boy badly. He was knocked out by Adesanya. Actually, dropped by Adesanya once and then knocked out again. So he basically took 2 knockouts and got saved by the bell once in that fight. So I am concerned about the chin, and I think that Duplessis took advantage of that. And the other thing that I will give Duplessis credit for is that Robert Whitaker, did not really attempt to mix the target in that fight. He was basically just head hunting, and Dricus Duplessis kept the high guard the whole entire fight. One of the negatives to high guard is that you can get hit to the body all day long. You can keep the high guard if someone doesn't want to hit you in the body. So credit to Dricus Duplessis for taking advantage of that. His stance is also so wonky, and you can easily kick him in the leg. And Robert Whitaker, I'm not sure, really put in any effort to try and take out the legs in that fight either. I'm not trying to, it's a good game plan. He came in with a good game plan because he took advantage of the things that Robert Whitaker did not do and did not do well. So I will give him credit for that. But I think there are guys who will really, really punish him for the way he fights. Also, credit to Duplessis for not getting, over aggressive, right? He did not blitz incredibly wild like he had done in some previous fights. He
Hmm.
kind of kept that more reserved. So credit to him for that as well. But I think at this time, the next fight is Adesanya. We can talk about the face off here in a minute, but I think in terms of the pure fight, I think Adesanya absolutely picks him apart with leg kicks early. Probably has his legs out of there in the first round, and then he probably really puts together some power shots in the second, gets him out. I think Israel Adesanya beats him and beats him relatively quickly and makes it look relatively easy. So that, and also I think other guys in that division beat him, like you said, Pereira. I think Cannonier beats him. Some other guys, maybe a Strickland, maybe a Costa. I'm not 100% sure where either of those guys are at in their career, just based off their last performances being against Abus Magomedov and Luke Rockhold. Um, Maybe they get the job done, maybe they don't, but I'm still I'm not all in on Duplessis being an elite middleweight, even though he just got an elite win. So I know I
Yeah.
said it also like 6 times and then made it seem like I was going to stop talking, but that
Oh
is
no.
the that is the conclusion of what I had there. So
I mean,
what are your
obviously,
thoughts on that Izzy Duplessis fight?
yeah, I'd be taking Adesanya for sure. I think that's the other thing too. If they were to, and I wanted to say first before we got full into Izzy, I just thought, or into the next fight, I just didn't. I thought when Robert Whitaker was just in the first minute of the fight, I just didn't like it already as someone as fan. I didn't think he necessarily maybe had it that night or that day, because I couldn't remember his last couple fights him like losing a first round or like losing and just not looking that like I guess good or effective in the first round, and then it just didn't seem I don't know. It did something seemed off. So what I was gonna say, I'm taking Adesanya, but in the same way, if Duplessis were to fight Whitaker again. I'd probably take Whitaker right now. So I don't know. It's tough. It's just like, and I could be wrong, and maybe he'll prove me wrong again. But against these top guys that I've seen be top guys for a while now, it's hard for me to pick Duplessis over them. But I mean, kind of like you mentioned, I guess maybe the strength, if he could get like the clinch or like a takedown or something, and make or somehow end up on top, maybe Duplessis can find a way. But I would probably just see him getting picked apart a good amount, like you said, and then as soon as he goes to the legs and the body, eventually one of those shots is going to come upstairs, and I can see him getting rocked. But I wanted to say, oh, and then you brought the other point too. Yeah, I didn't like the game plan necessarily either from Whitaker, because I was going to say is kind of with Pantoja. If you know someone has struggled with gas tank or hasn't had best conditioning in the past, why not take advantage of it with body shots or and work the leg? So and I was kind of bouncing back and forth, but I just thought Whitaker could have done more. But then also, as much as a good win as that was, I don't see. I would very confidently, very strongly take Adesanya in that next fight, which
Yeah.
sounds like it's happening after that pay-per-view and that press conference after. I mean, the post-fight and the press conference after.
Yeah, that was my next thing. But before we completely dive into that, I do want to say Robert Whitaker's next fight, I think, will be very telling for where he sits in his career.
Uh-huh.
I'm afraid that he has hit a wall. Could be wrong. We'll talk about Dan Hooker and Jalen Turner here in a second as well. I thought Dan Hooker hit a wall, and come to find out he did not. So,
Hmm.
not to say that is a foregone conclusion that Robert Whitaker has done. That could have been an off night. But I am concerned that he has hit a wall and some of that damage has caught up to him. Well, the book is still out there, but we'll
Because
have to watch that.
I wanted to say too, well, because he took some time off after that Izzy fight, and then went three in a row, had lost that second title fight with Izzy, even though it was razor close, um, and then I think won two more, and then lost this one. So I mean, he's been fighting a lot. I mean, I just hope if I want to see him get one more shot. Um, but I just don't know. Can he? Because a lot of other people get this treatment where he could. Because like I said this, because some of my friends are saying the same thing, and they know I'm a big fan. They're like, "Oh, he's done. He's over." Um, if he fights Sean Strickland next, like I think I would take him, or So if he gets, depending if he gets the right matchup next, if one of these other people wins one fight and then gets a title shot, or maybe wins two, but hopefully he doesn't have to win the three in a row again, and he can actually, because get some love. Because a lot of times in other divisions, people win one fight or two fights, and then they're ready right for a title shot again. So I just hope depending, I guess, on the next fight, like you're saying, depending how he looks, I hope he could get the one or two fights and not try to have to do the three or four and start a whole nother run.
Yeah, I will say I'm really interested to see how the UFC treats him at this point in his career. Who does he fight next? I think is a very big question because I think we're going to see other fighters in the future have to go through similar things as Robert Whitaker. He was the top guy in the division that wasn't the champion for a long time. Now he's not that, just purely based off losing. I'm interested to see how the UFC approaches that because I think in the near future we're going to have to go through that with guys like Max Holloway, guys like Colby Covington. If they lose fights, I think they'll probably get a similar treatment as to what the UFC is giving Whitaker right now. So I think it will be worth watching in that regard as well. Also, last thing, kind of unrelated, but I am the worst at picking Sean Strickland fights. I don't know what it is. I just can't nail the guy's fighting style down. You said the
Uh-huh.
name Strong Strickland, and I had flashbacks of picking his fights incorrectly. So wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yeah.
And then what do you make of the post fight shenanigans we had here between Izzy and Duplessis? It's a tough one. I know that. Do you think this is entertaining? Do you think this is ridiculous? Do you think they should have let Izzy into the cage? Do you think they should have kept him out? Just kind of what are your thoughts and kind of hindsight looking back at how that interaction went down?
Well, I think I didn't love him getting let in the cage. All us because this is Duplessis' like first big win. So let him have his moment too. I think
Mhm.
that letting people in the cage is reserved for that like Islam Volk, the still people that already established stars, or maybe especially too if they have beef. But I thought you got to let Duplessis have his moment a little bit. Like not everything. Adesanya doesn't need to be the main focus every single time. Like bro can sit on the sidelines for a second. Like you don't need. I get he's popular and stuff, but he doesn't need to be like everywhere all the time. Um, in saying that, though, I wish they would have let Duplessis have his moment. I thought it was hella funny. The whole post, it was just so random and wild, and he, I mean, I thought it was. He said we were African brothers, right? And then proceeded to do what he did, and then called it a 36 and me, 26 and me.
That
Could never
was
figure it out.
that was the best part when he didn't say 23 and me. He accidentally said it incorrectly 2 times in a row.
Yeah. And then I just and then he's like, you may be African, but we are no brothers. Duplessis responded. I don't know. It was just I thought it was kind of funny. I don't want to say I don't think it's the best look, for the UFC. I can see how uh it's I think the article earlier said clown show, um and then I can see how people might not like it, but I thought it was good. I don't know if you see. It might be a little bit different for UFC people, but if you watch Mic'd Up or watch any like, um, I don't know, it's like NBA or NFL, like that's how, kind of people talk on the court and stuff like that. So I don't think it's anything new. It's definitely not anything new. I just don't know if this UFC audience has seen something like that.
Yeah, I think it was something because I agree with you. I thought it was funny. I didn't really take it too personally, right? Or didn't really, that's not the type of thing that's going to upset me. That's just it's never something that's really got me going. So I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it. I didn't really look at it too seriously. And also, if there's any reason to keep Israel out of the cage, it's because they heard him speak beforehand and they were like, no, that guy's absolutely hammered.
Exactly.
Keep
I was
him
just gonna
out.
say he was hammered
Yeah,
too.
he
That
was
doesn't
hammered.
help.
Yeah, that did not help anything. Um, but it's like I'm not gonna let that really upset me personally. And at the end of the day, you're allowed to sell a fight however you want to sell a fight. And I'm willing to guess that this fight is gonna do fairly well on the pay per view.
Hmm.
Israel Adesanya is a fairly big pay per view star coming off a highlight reel knockout, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. This is
Hmm.
the start of things. We haven't even gotten to the press conference yet, and that press conference is going to be wild, headlined by those two. I believe Tai Tuivasa is going to be on that card in one
Okay.
because that's going to be in Sydney, so he'll be on that press conference stage one way or the other. So I'll just warn people if they didn't like it, there's gonna be a lot more where that came from. So didn't really affect me though. I'll take it for what it is. I'll find it funny. It's hard to get me off trash talk to be honest. I that's just something I enjoy.
Yeah, and I'll say too, because I think Duplessis could probably, and the couple times he spoke now, I think he can be, fun at a press conference. Has enough things to go back and forth with. But I wanted to say, oh yeah, I thought that afterwards too, did you see? I thought it was a fair question. Dana got all mad like he always does about any question that has any significance or severity or means anything. And then he's like, "Oh, what a dumb question." But it was a rare Dana W. when he was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Well, is he said the N word like 50 times?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's black. He can say that." And I was like, "Okay, there you go, Dana. He gets
Yeah.
it." But I thought the question was fair, real quick, because that is a huge concern. I can see how that can spiral out real quick as it like turns into that versus that over the whole span of promoting the fight.
Yes. And the other thing was I think the initial question was good. And then Dana was like, what are you asking me? And then he
Hmm.
rephrases the question, and the way he rephrased it was terrible. I
Yeah,
believe I want to say it was John Morgan, but I'm not 1,000%.
it was.
It was
It's the dude that he always gets first
okay.
questions, first
First,
dibs on all
John
the.
Morgan, first question. But the initial question of racial undertones, I think, is fair because the reason that they have beef is because Duplessis said that he is the real African fighter in the UFC because he trains in Africa, was born in Africa, lives in Africa, trains in Africa, still lives there.
Hmm.
And guys like Izzy and Francis and Usman, who were born in Africa and had to leave for various reasons, took exception to that. And I can't really blame those guys, especially if you're Francis Ngannou and you grew up working in the mines and then you had to leave to even attempt to, like, he would not have gotten the opportunity to train combat sports if he wouldn't have left Africa. So I understand why those guys are mad. And that's kind of the underlying racial tones there. And I think that is what the question, that back and forth was the question at hand, not is if Izzy's allowed to say the
Yeah.
N word. And then when John Morgan says, well, he says the N word, and then Dana hits him with, yeah, he's allowed to. It's like
Uh-huh.
the follow up was, can he say the N word? Dana handled that wonderfully. Yes, of course he is. But the initial question of the actual, like, who's the real fighter from Africa, I think is it's very reasonable to ask those questions. But the follow up from John Morgan didn't really clarify what he was attempting to ask him at all. I think that was just bad question asking, and
Hmm.
Dana answered the rephrase question and it hit a home run on that
Yeah.
portion of the
Answered
question.
the easy one.
Yeah,
The
that was the easy
Because
one.
I think yeah, but because Duplessis started it when he that's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't know. Yeah, that's I don't. I just think it's that's a wild thing to say. There's like, of course, like I just don't want people to think like Izzy if they just happened like Izzy started this last night in the cage. Like no, this yeah, it had been going on, and yeah, I just thought the whole thing was funny,
hmm yeah,
and that's I'm excited to see how it goes. Hopefully, it's stay away with from anything too crazy.
yeah,
But I thought you got it right there. He said like, oh, who's we're African brothers, we're the real African, and then proceeds to say, that certain word multiple times in his
yeah.
face.
Yeah, that's also something that a lot of people probably don't know is Driscus did start it. Driscus does love to talk trash,
Hmm.
and he started it, and that isn't even the first time he talked trash. He was talking trash about Bo Nickel when Bo Nickel made his UFC debut. Driscus Duplessis was on the prelims, and Bo Nickel was on the main card, and he was talking trash to Bo Nickel about that. So it's not like this is the first time Driscus has ever talked trash. Probably won't be the last either. But yeah, like you said, I hope we don't get anything too crazy. But right now, I think we're just looking at a hyped up build up. So I think we're
Hmm.
in a fine spot right now. So
Is he less drunk? Might be a little more clever too with some
yeah,
comebacks
that
during
that
a press
is
conference.
the material probably does get better if he's not hammered. So let's jump down to one of the best fights on the card. We had an absolute war between Dan Hooker and Jalen Turner. I guess just once again, what I love this fight. What were your initial reactions to this fight? And this didn't even win fight of the night, but
I know.
I imagine Dana's getting these dudes hooked up with one of his classic. That guy, they're getting taken care of bonuses.
Uh-huh. I think my first reaction was I should have stuck with my gut, and because I just felt I like Hooker, and I felt like this was one that I don't know. I just felt like he could win this, which I probably would have been hating myself in the first round. But I thought this was a super fun fight. Two warriors. I think Jalen Turner, even though he lost, got a lot more respect too. If people hadn't seen him like that, because I thought that Gamrot fight was pretty fire too. I enjoyed that, his display in that. So it was fun to watch him just go for it all three rounds on the feet and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think yeah, overall great fight. I think they each had their high moments. They each looked pretty rocked and bad at times, and it's a fight where one person wins, but I think they both win, especially because where they're at in the rankings too. I think it's both. It's just a boost for them because it's not like they were getting necessarily a title shot off that fight anyways. They were still gonna have to fight, a couple more. So I thought overall great. That's a perfect fight on a card like that.
Yeah. And one of the main reasons I really wanted to talk about this was because I wrote this in the preview. I picked Jalen Turner by first round knockout, And in best bets, I put I took that fight to go under 1.5, and on my own, I bet Turner by knockout as well. So I wanted to talk about this because I really thought Dan Hooker was done. And I'm glad he's not, but I really thought he was done. I thought he had taken so much damage in his career, and the pinnacle of that was kind of the Poirier fight that he had. They had an
Hmm.
absolute war, 5 rounds. He wins 2 rounds, almost gets the job done, almost finishes Poirier, doesn't get the finish, and then after that he loses in the first round to Chandler, loses in the first round to Makhachev. That was submission, and then he has some wins and he loses again in the first round to Arnold Allen.
And that was
And
horrible. That one
the Arnold
going,
Allen one.
yeah, going down it instantly just did not look good, and then just didn't look like he had his chin. He didn't look like he had a chin, but it could have been due because of the weight cut now, maybe.
Hmm. Yeah, and I thought he was done. So I was heavily invested in Jalen Turner getting a finish. He has a ton of power, and in that second round, he landed one of the biggest head kicks I've ever seen that didn't result in a knockout. So come to find out, Dan Hooker is not done. So I have to 100% take my hat off to Dan Hooker and his performance, because I thought it was it for his career. I thought he had just taken too much damage. Come to find out, he's still capable of fighting, and he's still capable of taking damage and rolling forward and continuing to fight. So credit to him for that. I did not think that's a point we were at, but that makes me happy because Dan Hooker is one of the most exciting guys at 155, and him against that, I think he's just outside the top 10. You can book him against anyone in the rankings, and you're going to get a fun fight. So I'm pumped for Dan Hooker to be at this point in his career, and credit to him because I personally thought we weren't going to see this version of him again.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's because he's been hit with so many hands, like so many punches, but he hasn't used up all his kicks yet. So I think he could maybe take a couple more head kicks. Because that, like you said, I was trying to think because I remember it being bad and he almost getting finished. I remember that head kick. Now it hit him, and I remember it was like, oh, he just died, and then he stood there and nothing happened, and I was like, okay, is he? He's I guess he's fine. And then like the inverse of that is he had like if there was more time on that second round, right? Jalen Turner was out of there.
He won
Um,
that round. Dan Hooker won that round after eating that head kick, which is crazy.
mhm. That's yeah okay because yeah no that's what I don't know. That's always the fun fights too. Is when I just like when you get to see someone like on the brink of almost being done, and then at the pinnacle of like they're on the attack and like they're trying to get someone out of there. I love those fights.
Yep.
Because you obviously it makes sense you don't get those often, but yeah they both look good, and I'm like you said I'm excited for Dan Hooker's next fights. I've been a huge fan of his fights. At least I thought the past however many have been entertaining, and then I'm more of a fan now of Jalen Turner than before that fight started. So
Hmm. Yeah, and credit to both of them. That was an absolute war. So you can't do anything but take your hats off to them. Last fight here on the main card. Not really much to break down because it was over fairly quickly. But Bo Nickel put the hands together,
hmm
got a knockout over Val Woodburn. I guess just what are your reactions to Bo Nickel, who is a 3-time college national champion wrestler, one of the best American college wrestlers of all time, going out there and putting the hands together?
um, I mean, it looked good. I mean, that's I guess the short and concise way of saying it. The hands look good. It was fun watching him. Yeah, land a couple shots in a row and a couple of like heavy, devastating shots too. Um, I guess, and then I'll let you, give your thoughts too, your quick thoughts. But I was just gonna say, I, I guess they tried to. Can we see him fight someone though, please? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the only thing. Like the hands look good, and it is fun to see the hands look good. But okay, we've seen the wrestling and submissions, and now we've seen the hands a little bit. Now let's see him against a better opponent.
Yeah, in terms of the fight, the how the fight went, the first hook he landed, where he just kind of landed that step in shot that you don't really see coming, really impressive. I imagine Val Woodburn was caught off guard that he was willing to sit there and throw the hands with him. I imagine that wasn't something that Val Woodburn expected at all. I imagine he was expecting the takedown early.
Hmm.
But the biggest takeaway for me in terms of the fight itself is that he was willing to strike. He wasn't, desperately diving for the takedown because Val threw a absolutely massive right hand in there in one of those exchanges, and Bo could have said, "Nope, I'm not trying to eat that. Let me
Yeah.
grab this takedown. Let me submit this guy." Instead, he was willing to stay on the feet and he was willing to strike. So that makes me a little bit more optimistic in his hands long term, and more optimistic that he can progress some of those skills. And I'm with you. I don't necessarily need to see Bo Nickel fight a ranked guy right now.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think we have to push him incredibly hard, but Jalen Pickett is not a great fighter at all. Jalen Pickett was gonna get cut
yeah.
prior to, he was one of the lowest guys in the totem pole in that division. I mean, he just beat someone who was not on the UFC roster. Val was gonna get a shot on Contender Series, but he didn't have any experience in the UFC, and that was his first time in there as well. And I just like to see him get a win over. I think Trayshawn Gore was the original opponent, was a fair fight. I don't think Trayshawn Gore is an outstanding fighter. I do not think he's elite, but he's young. He has some potential, and he has a win in the UFC, and he's kind of
Hmm.
been there. So I'd like to see him get someone who maybe doesn't have a ton of potential. Maybe they've only got 3 or 4 UFC fights, but maybe they're 2-2 in their promotion, or maybe someone who's 1-2. You know, 2-1, whatever, but someone with a little bit of UFC experience and at least a win.
Yeah, I was not mad at that first matchup with Trisha Gore. So I agree too, because I want to see someone who's just with some like a little bit of defensive wrestling. I just want to put a couple rounds in, like 'cause he's never even been through round two, right?
Hmm.
Just see. I just want to see a couple rounds on Bo Nickel too. See how
Yeah,
he gets. And then maybe if is willing to throw those hands more. Now I want to see those hands maybe a little bit around too when you're a little more tired and stuff like that too. So,
yeah,
but it was a fun way to start off an overall like great card. So,
yeah.
and I did not expect it that way either.
Yeah, that's a nice way to start the night off with a shock. You see the knockout, and it's not the guy you're expecting to get the knockout.
Uh
All of a
huh.
sudden, they're putting the hands together, and you're going, "What's going on here? What's going on here?" He gets
Yeah.
the knockout. You're like, "My God!" So credit to him for that, and way to start off the night. Started off the night fairly hot as well, and that kind of momentum rode all the way to the main event. So
Hmm.
credit to them for that as well. And we had some fun fights on the prelims. Nothing too massive though. Robbie Lawler's retirement, which we touched on to start the show. Some other fun fighters, but nothing too crazy to dig into. And we're sitting in hour 7 here, so unless you have any closing remarks that you want to get out of the way for UFC 290, I say we're all good. We've got the main card packed up and talked about, so I say we're good to end it. And if you have anything you want to throw in here before we do, feel free.
No, I like I like the whole weekend and everything. That was good. I just hope the UFC tries and sees what they can do when they put some good fights together, and I hope
Mhm.
we can continue that in the future and we end the year with some more good cards.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm with you. And the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show will be back tomorrow. It will be the Tuesday crew. I assume it's Matt and Bagdonis. No promises, no promises because that is not confirmed. But regardless, someone will be in the chair for tomorrow. But most importantly, thank you to everyone who tuned in today to listen to me and Anthony break down some UFC. We appreciate it.